Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we are going to be discussing the severe weather threat that will occur today, here Wednesday, April 7th, as well as the severe weather threat that could linger into the later parts of this week into the southern parts of the United States. But before we get started, I'm going to have to ask you all, do me a favor, take the time to hit that like button down below, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, follow me on social media, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also, I most likely will be live streaming today. As a matter of fact, I'm not just going to be live streaming. It's not just going to be a chance. I will live stream this event today. Enhanced risk, the conditions that it has to make it enhanced, as well as, I said yesterday that it had a 5%, and I most likely will live stream anyways, even if it had a 5%. Whether that changed or not is doesn't really matter. I'm going to live stream the event today, so please turn on notifications. All right, if you turn on notifications, you guys will be able to know when exactly I'll be live streaming, and so you guys can join in on tracking these storms with me and potentially trying to save lives. That's the plan here. That's what we do. So let's get into what all is happening with this event here today. An enhanced risk has been issued for places in central to eastern parts of Arkansas and southern parts of Arkansas, into northern parts of Louisiana, northwestern parts of Mississippi, southwestern parts of Tennessee, so basically near the Memphis area. Your slight risk extends further north all the way to just to the west of St. Louis. So places like Jefferson City, you guys could easily be impacted by this. Not exactly Springfield as much. Springfield's now a bit more to the west of the slight risk. But Lufkin, Alexandria, Jackson, Tennessee, you guys could easily see some slight risk conditions. And then your marginal risk, which extends all the way up from Des Moines all the way down to just to the east of Kansas City, down towards Joplin and Springfield, moving on through to places just to the west of the Texarkana vicinity, all the way down into the New Orleans and the Mobile vicinity, as well as the Birmingham area, moving all through into western parts of Nashville. So if you live over there, you guys need to continue to monitor this event. You have a marginal chance for severe storms, but still a chance for severe storms nevertheless. You have your 15% chance for hail. Your hail decided to stick around. There's the lapse rates that are pretty low at the lower amounts, which means not as strong of an updraft. What I meant by that, I know it sounded like a hodgepodge, but the lapse rates at the lower parts of the atmosphere relatively weak, so your hail for the most part has kind of just stayed the same. So your 15% chance for hail will be localized more or less into Shreveport, Little Rock, Longview, Bossier City, North Little Rock, Monroe. If you live over there, Pine Bluff as well, Jonesboro, you guys could easily see some hail in upwards of 1 inch, maybe even larger in some areas. And then your wind risk right here, this is your 30%. They just upgraded this over the past 12 hours or something like that. Your 30% chance for hail is now localized in the places like Memphis, Shreveport, Little Rock, Jackson, Bossier City. This is basically where the enhanced risk is now. But a 30% chance for wind is indicated in red, the 15 is indicated in yellow, and the 5% is indicated in brown. So if you are in those areas, you have that probability of seeing wind gusts in upwards of 58 miles per hour or above within 25 miles of a point. This is one thing that also has changed. That is your tornado risk. They originally had the 10% as a really skinny area right here. They've expanded it a bit. I think this is more or less in response to how the North American model, the two sets of North American models have portrayed this event within those areas. So a larger 10% has been introduced into places like Memphis, Shreveport, Little Rock, Jackson, Mississippi, Bossier City, Monroe, Pine Bluff. If you live over in those areas, you guys could easily see some severe weather. A decent chance for some tornadoes. The probability, whatever probability, whether you have a 2%, a 5%, or a 10%, that's your probability of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of a point. No significant risk though, which means that the chances of seeing significant tornadoes are below 10%, which is a good thing here. However, just by looking at what the North American models have said, they could introduce that sig risk later, but that'll just have to be with as the event gets closer and how the models react to each other, and if they modify their forecasts for future outlook. All right, day 2 is not really a whole lot. You have your 5% for wind and hail and a 2% for tornadoes, right where I said there would be. I haven't been talking about this event a whole lot, but I said that it would be northern Alabama, northern Georgia, and southern Tennessee a couple videos before. I also said that Mississippi would get into the action, but fortunately for you guys are not there. So 2% for your guys' general vicinity. I agree with that. I saw that one this past, Saturday? Something like that. And so, yeah, I still agree that there is a tornado risk. I've looked at this event a couple of times. It's not actually as strong as once thought, which is a good news here, but thank God I didn't overhype this event, and thank God I didn't talk too much about this event, because, this is not exactly one of those things to where it's one of those large-scale type severe weather events like today or maybe even the day afterwards. So speaking of the day afterwards, this is the day 3 outlook for Friday. Look at this massive slight risk here. I mean, look, extends all the way to Dallas, Fort Worth, all the way over into New Orleans, all the way down into Plano. It includes Biloxi, maybe parts of Mobile, Jackson, Tupelo, Little Rock, Shreveport, Monroe, Lake Charles, maybe a little bit of Houston. It's actually, Houston's a bit more into the marginal risk, so the northern parts of Houston, or the northeastern parts of Houston, you guys are in the slight risk. And then your marginal extends all the way into the Appalachians, near the coastal Carolinas, all the way down to Pensacola, a bit more towards Memphis and northern parts of Arkansas, into places south of Oklahoma City, south of Moore and Norman, going all the way down, following the slight risk into Houston. So that is something that we need to continue to monitor as time goes along. This is a 3-day forecast, and this is actually pretty interesting to watch, or to watch unfold. Just by looking at how the North American model is portraying this seems to be really one of those things where it's kind of like a gradient. The further west you are, the more of a hail risk you're in. The further east you go, the more of a wind risk you're in. And if you take a look at the probabilistic, geez, I couldn't say that word to say the life of me. Probabilistic. There we go. The outlook for that, you can see that there's a bit of a hatched risk located over Dallas, Fort Worth, and that'll be more or less where your hail will actually be as significant as it is. And then as you start to head a bit further east, there isn't as much of a sig risk, and it's more or less just a bit of a, geez, stop, my phone is killing me. As you head further east, it's going to be a bit more of a wind risk there. Then your day 4 outlook, you also have a little bit of a 15% risk here for places like Pensacola, all the way up into Columbus, Tallahassee's in this, Macon, Georgia's in this, Albany, Georgia's in this. You guys need to continue to monitor this event as we get closer and closer if you live over there. I know I have some people who live in this 15%, whether they're my viewers or not. I have a friend that lives over there, so he'll have to monitor this one. I'll probably tell him every now and then what's going on, but I'll keep you guys up to date with these outlooks from Friday and Saturday, especially after this event today. All right, let's take a look at the models here. We're going to take a look at the HRRR model here first for this event today. This is an hourly model that updates every hour, so we might as well go to the 12Z run here. And as you can see, thunderstorms are now starting to move through the general vicinity of Jefferson City into northeastern parts of Missouri, even into Illinois as we speak. And as that continues to move on through into the evening, Then we have a new line of storms that'll begin to develop. That'll start at around, say, 17Z, which would, if you subtract 5 from that, that's 12. So at about 12 noon is when some thunderstorms can start to develop along the Texarkana region, all the way up into the Joplin, Missouri vicinity. And then the line will begin to consolidate a bit more, heading through into the Kansas City area. And so now you have this giant band of storms that are still not as mature yet, but as time goes along, as we move this along through here, the model run, you can see the thunderstorms start to become a bit more consolidated into more of a line, but they do seem a bit more discrete within the line. So we might have these situations to where some instances we have this giant squall line, this giant QLCS, to where it's just a straight line of precipitation, to where they'd fill in all these little gaps right here. We might see some of that later on in the evening, but we also might see what is called a broken line QLCS, to where you have these discrete cells that can form along the line, these little gaps that are present here. And so this is exactly what we're seeing in the beginning stages of this event, and this is where you can actually start to see your tornado risk start to amplify a bit due to those gaps being open within the line. So that is something that we really need to monitor, and that's something that is really interesting that this model, the HRRR, is showing us here at this moment. As time moves along, Jefferson City and Little Rock starts to get impacted at around 4 o'clock. Same with Shreveport, Louisiana. Moving on through into the latter parts of the hours, Texarkana's out of the risk, Fort Smith's out of the risk, Joplin and Springfield's out of the risk by 6 o'clock. So that is the good news there. But more storms continue to hammer its way through, and places like Pine Bluff, you guys are now going to start seeing those severe storms moving through into Memphis and St. Louis at around 7 o'clock. You guys are going to start seeing those storms. Monroe, you guys are going to start seeing those storms shortly after at around 8 o'clock. So as this continues to move on through, this line starts to become a bit more consolidated, as I had mentioned earlier, and this will begin to form a bit of a regular QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system. So really something that we need to monitor as this moves on through. Jackson, Mississippi, you guys will start to get this risk right around 10 o'clock, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, that general vicinity. So the overnight hours, more or less. And that'll continue to linger all the way throughout the evening into the morning of Thursday. So that's really something that people need to monitor. And the thing of it is that even though Jackson, Tennessee gets these storms at around 10 o'clock as well, and they go away for a little bit, you will have another line of storms that'll move on through into the early overnight hours, into the morning for tomorrow. So definitely something to keep in mind there. Your dew points. Typically you want it over 60 in order for us to be able to say for certain that it's moist. So the colors in blue, or this kind of meh blue, is indicated at 60 degrees or above. The darker blues indicate higher 60s. And so in some areas, for the most part, we're in the low to mid 60s, maybe upper 60s, into places like Louisiana and Arkansas. So that is definitely something that we're going to want to watch. Those areas around where that 10% risk for tornadoes is, you have a lot of moisture that is still residing within those areas. And so that is something that we'll have to take into account here tonight. Your convective available potential energy, or CAPE as I like to say, which is just the measure of the buoyant force between warm air rising and cold air sinking. So the more displacement in between the two indicates the amount of CAPE that you have. So the more CAPE, the more energy there is typically in the atmosphere, the stronger the thunderstorms typically will get. So as we continue to move on through here with the HRRR, there are some amounts that get over 2,000 joules per kilogram, which that's around the vicinity in which you can start considering strong thunderstorms. But for the most part, it's relatively below 2,000 joules per kilogram, except for some areas in north central Missouri. So really something that we're going to have to watch here, especially as this moves overnight. And in some areas there actually is some rejuvenation of CAPE especially along the border of Arkansas and Mississippi near the Mississippi River, to where cape amounts actually can get to upwards of 1,500 and above. So that's really something that I'm going to have to monitor tonight as I continue to live stream and monitor that event heavily. And then let's start taking a couple soundings here, because we can take a look at the wind shear from a very acute perspective here by taking these soundings, which just basically samples the atmosphere around these storms. So I'm going to take a sounding right here in south central Arkansas, and it's not too bad. I'll guide you guys what I'm looking through here on my first turn. That way, when I take more soundings in the future, you guys will be able to see what's happening. But your photograph right here tells you the wind direction with height. So if you can imagine a person letting go a weather balloon, and you are tracking where that weather balloon was going, and your house was right here, your weather balloon would move in all sorts of different directions. Excuse me. So your weather balloon eventually goes north, and then it goes east, and then it goes south. It goes north again, it goes east, and then it goes south, and then it goes south again, and it makes this little weird shape. But that's basically the photograph as it goes with height. What we're going to want to look for specifically to indicate spin in the atmosphere is by looking at this red line right here. This indicates the lower parts of the atmosphere, 0 to 3 kilometers up in the sky. So because we do have that curling off to the right, mainly from 0 to 2 kilometers up in the sky, we do have a little bit of a tornado risk here, indicating our spin in the atmosphere. However, with the latter parts of the photograph kind of going in front of storm motion, you could see this as a bit of a high precipitation based supercell. So that is something that we're going to want to monitor, or people who are chasing, who might chase, they need to monitor that as well, due to storm motion. Your dew points are in the mid 60s here. That's what this green line represents. So the number right here indicates your dew point. Your red line that goes up throughout the atmosphere, that's your temperature line. So at the beginning it's 72, then it gets colder and colder as you head up into the sky. This dotted line right here is the pathway in which a developing thunderstorm would take in order to reach maturity. So we call that a developing parcel line, and that is there isn't any capping inversion from what I see from this, which I'll get into what that is in a second. Anything in between this red line, when the red line's on the left and the dotted line's on the right, anywhere in this space right here, that is CAPE, or convective available potential energy. That's how you read that on a skew T chart, which that's what this box is right here. There is no capping, which is when the red line down towards the bottom of the sounding goes to the right of the dotted line. That's typically when you see capping. We'll get into that later on in the video, but there is no capping there, and that actually represents right here on the sounding. Your CAPE is forecast to be 2,400. Your capping inversion stays below 60, so this is good on a convective scale. On a shear scale, on the lower parts of the atmosphere, your storm relative velocity is above 200. I typically look for that area to be above 200 in order for me to consider tornadic potential. And your shear at surface to 1 kilometer is around 30, which is pretty good. Surface to 3 kilometers, 32. That's also pretty good. So anytime a helicity at surface to 1 kilometer is over 200, you typically can start considering tornadic potential. Your lapse rates aren't too bad. This is what I was talking about in regards to the hail. You'll see later on in the video why there's a significant risk for most likely hail on Friday, but the reason why they didn't go SIG here today is because the lapse rates at surface to 3 kilometer is staying at around 6.5. That's kind of the bare minimum in order for you to get decent updrafts to uphold hail or large amounts of hail. So, that's one of those things where it is what it is, but for the most part, the lapse rates are pretty good. So this could support small hail potential and maybe even tornadic potential here. Your storm motion is moving off to the north and east at around 38-ish miles per hour. So these storms are moving a little bit quick But still something to keep in mind that it does have tornadic potential, it does have energy, and that it does show something really interesting within these areas. I'm taking a sounding for south central Missouri now. Your hodograph curls off to the right, so that indicates tornadic potential. That checks out. Your dew point's at around 60. That's the bare minimum, but it still has some energy. So that's something that we can check off there. Your cape is forecast to be around 2,000. Right now it's at 1,000. So once it gets up there, then we can check off the convective aspect, the capping inhibition or capping inversion or cap. That is below 60, so negative 60. So that is good. As I said, anytime it goes above 60, negative 60, that's when like negative 60 is the bare maximum to where you can have cap. If it's anywhere over that, good luck with that. Your thunderstorms might not even form. Your lapse rates are all right, still 6.5 and 6.9, so it's not the best in the world, but you can still check that off. Your helicity is above 200 from surface to 1 kilometer, so that's pretty good. Your shear at 3, surface to 3 kilometers, 43, surface to 1 kilometer is 30, so that's pretty good as well. So there is some tornadic potential there in southern Missouri. It's pretty much equivalent, in my honest opinion, actually. So, but there's a lot more of a widespread risk in places like Arkansas and Mississippi. So that's the reason why there's a 10% over there and not over in Missouri. All right, let's take a look at how the NAM sees this event. And the one thing that you'll notice from the HRRR with a significant tornado parameter is that there's a lot more blues, not as many yellows and reds. But the NAM, however, is just the opposite. If you take a look at, this is 7 o'clock in the evening, boom. It's popped off and it's a lot more yellow. Someone played Coldplay. And you can see a little bit later in the evening in the Louisiana has a little bit more of a significant tornado parameter, but doesn't really show a whole lot. Whereas the NAM, look at this, widespread area here that people could be impacted. This actually shows a PDS tornado. You guys can't see it because of my face, but it actually shows the possible hazard type as a PDS tor. So that's something that we need to monitor as well. But your hodograph, go through our checklist. Hodograph goes to the right. That's good. Your dew points are in the mid-60s. That's good. Your helicity is a lot higher than what the HRRR actually says it is. It actually is double the amount. It's 430. So that's really good. Your shear at surface of 1 kilometer is stronger than your surface to 3 kilometers. So that's kind of interesting. That kind of tells me that some storms might actually be, some tornadoes, if they were to form, might be a little brief, unless if your low-level jet kicks in, to which it might sustain for a little bit. But still, that's really interesting to see that the helicity is double the amount that the HRRR says. Your lapse rates are okay, except for the surface to 3 kilometer, into which it's pretty poor. It's 5.8, so it's not the best in the world, but it's not the worst in the world either. I've seen worse, but it's still pretty bad. This actually says that storm motion is a bit more to the east, northeast, and it's moving at 50 miles per hour. So that's something to keep in mind, that unless if it just accelerates over time, which it doesn't, these storms, according to the North American model, are moving pretty fast. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I want to also take a sounding real quickly for south central Missouri, just to see if anything is major over there. So we'll take a sounding right about here. And Skinny Cape, hodograph does curl to the right, but it curls too much to the right, so that might come into play as a factor. If it curls too much to the right, then it won't be able to actually get that classic signature. It'll just spin too much, if you will, and the storm might actually collapse upon itself. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if we're in Missouri, that might happen. Your moisture isn't really too good. It's all right, 62 degrees as your dew point. Your cape is forecast to be 1,900, so it doesn't exactly meet that 2,000 threshold, but still you have some moisture. Capping inversion is nothing for the most part. Your lapse rates are okay. Your helicity is 304, so you might see some tornadic potential off of that. Your shear from surface to 1 is 34. Your surface to 3 is 30. So definitely a really interesting sounding that we see here off of southern Missouri. All right, let's take a look at the events later on. We're gonna skip tomorrow for the most part until we're gonna talk a bit about tomorrow a bit more in tomorrow's video. So the people who wanna know about what's gonna happen tomorrow, tune to that. But we're gonna move on to this event over here for Friday, and I can't exactly give you all a timing as to when these thunderstorms will move on through because it's pretty sporadic. But one thing I do know is that there's a boundary that's going to be moving through, and that for the most part, there's a decent chance of thunderstorms to form into places like Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, Louisiana, and Alabama. But it's limited in Texas. Sure, there is that significant risk, which means that you could see some significant severe weather with those general vicinities, but I'll actually show you why it doesn't show up as high as it does on the NAM, or at least the NAM doesn't really favor it a whole lot. So I'll take a sounding over here in Texas because that's where the event is most likely going to take place, and you can see right here your photograph curls to the right. That's good enough. Here's what I was talking about with that capping inversion to where you can actually see it on the sounding. You have a lot of cape here, a lot of cape. But here's your capping inversion that I was talking about. If it goes to the right and it goes back over to the left, this area right here is your capping inversion. If you think of it this way, think about it as if you have a water bottle right here and you have water in the water bottle. If you squeeze the water bottle and you still have the lid on top, the lid's not going to pop off. It's going to stay on and all the water is going to stay in the water bottle. But if you let go of the lid a little bit and blow it up a little, if you let go of the lid a little bit, twist the bottle here a little bit to represent cape here. So real quickly, I'll actually go full screen here for this demonstration. Who knows? I might blow my head off with this thing. So. But all right, so a lot of energy. You can actually see the lid is bowling a little bit with the amount of energy that there is here. So if we relieve the stress of the lid, it actually pops off and you can see that there's steam that comes out. And that's exactly what happens when there's not a lot of capping inversion. So that's just a cool demonstration that I like to do sometimes with some of these events here. And so, but if the lid is super strong, the lid won't pop off. And so that's the reason why I say -60 is the bare maximum. And because we're seeing that in this event above -60, it comes into question as to whether or not those storms will form. But the reason why they have that SIGRIST over there is because, sure, you have your surface to 3 kilometer lapse rates at 6.6, which is not bad. Your 3 to 6 kilometer lapse rates are 9, and that is extraordinarily high. Typically 8 is high, but 9 is extraordinarily high. So large amounts of hail, if storms were able to form, which I wouldn't be surprised if they formed off of a boundary. There's a dry line that's moving on through, which if I show you that real quickly here, this is heading into Friday, so you can see Friday morning, Friday afternoon, here's your dry line right here. So if storms form along a dry line, won't see a major tornadic potential because of the capping inversion and how it might limit how thunderstorms might form. But if they do form off of a boundary, there could be small chance for tornadic potential, but definitely a lot of large hail in this general vicinity. So something to keep in mind with all of that as this continues to push on through closer and closer onto Friday. But for the most part, dew points in this general vicinity is all the way up into the mid to upper 60s. I mean, there even gets into the 70s in some parts in Louisiana, and some parts of Louisiana, which is that purple area. So that is something to keep in mind as that continues to get closer and closer. Your CAPE, or your convective available potential energy at the surface here, actually shows that for the most part, CAPE will not be an issue here on Friday. There's actually some areas that gets an upwards of 4,000 joules per kilogram in Louisiana, near or north of Baton Rouge. And then some other areas across the board, you have Cape numbers and upwards of around 4,000 joules per kilogram across the board. Once you start heading into Arkansas, it's a little bit less, but there's still a plethora amount of energy here with this system. So whether or not storms will be able to form and use this energy, that will come into question. But as you get further and further to the east, there's a lot less capping inversion. And actually, I'll take a sounding here in this area in Mississippi to show you. There's a lot less capping inversion here in places like Mississippi. Your shear is lacking a little bit, but still, as you get further and further east, it tends out to be not as capped, maybe a bit more of a gusty wind threat. I would say even a large hail threat as well, because of how much energy and how the lapse rates are. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to monitor across the board. That this could just be a giant hail threat for the most part. And so, yeah, a lot of energy here in parts of the deep south for the most part here on Friday. And I'll switch the area again, show you how much energy here on Friday. Take a look, as I mentioned, a lot of energy for the most part here in some of these places. Actually, if we disregard the hodograph, the energy in itself can sometimes get an upwards of 5,000 joules per kilogram. So that is pretty insane with all of this. But anyways, we'll discuss that at a future date. We talked a lot about what was happening today. So that's what we're going to be mainly focusing on later on in the evening. As I said, I am going to live stream this event, the 10% chance of tornadoes rain for most areas in Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, maybe even to Missouri if they decide to extend it further north. But regardless, I will live stream. If you were to give me an exact date as to when I would live stream, if I go quickly back to the HRRR, give you a rough estimate as to when I would, it would most likely be at around, say, 3 o'clock-ish, 2 to 3 o'clock-ish Eastern, Central Daylight Time, something like that. I'll see what I can do. But if I see something, see something that I particularly think that I need to warn about, I'll live stream earlier. So turn on notifications. Anyways, that's going to be it from me. If you guys did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. Turn on notifications. Share this with friends and family and on social media, especially if they like in-depth analysis. I know a lot of people have been saying make my videos shorter, but if I had time to edit them, I probably would. Otherwise, I love this in-depth analysis type thing, and I think I actually do it relatively quickly compared to other people who try to do in-depth analysis with like soundings and stuff like that. It's just more or less a way for me to show my work. So if you guys do enjoy it, do all that. Also follow me on social media, share this video on social media, and yeah, join my Discord server, turn on notifications because we will be live streaming tonight, and I will see you guys then. So thank you guys for coming out. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. As I said, catch you guys tonight for my live stream. Peace.